Welcome back. In this video, we're actually going to look at how we can actually have a leaderboard to keep track of our players' score, and then do an automated daily or weekly kind of prize draw, giving Bitcoin to the player who ranks highest on that leaderboard. So if we remember from our original game, the player logs in with Zebedee, and this game is very simple. They press add point. When they add a point, we let them withdraw as many points as they have, as stats, based on how many points they have. So if I press add points 5 times, I have 5 points. Then when I press withdraw, I withdraw 5 stats. What we want to do this time is we want to keep track of how many points all the players have, and have a leaderboard of that. So once a day or once a week, we can see which player has the most points, and then based on that, we can give it an extra prize to the top 5 players or top 2 players. So to do that, we want to take a look at the PlayFab leaderboard concept. So PlayFab already has this kind of leaderboards kind of system made. So the first thing I did is I made a leaderboard called Player Score. Very, very simple. I called it Player Score. I reset frequency to manually, and we'll get into that in a bit. But this basically means, how do we want to reset the leaderboard? I could set it to daily or weekly. So if I set it to daily, this would keep track of how many points the users have and rank them. But once a day, it would reset it back to 0. But I opted to do it manually for this tutorial, but you could also automate that. And then it's also the aggregation method, how do you want to add to this leaderboard? So what I'm actually doing now is every time a player adds a point, I want to sum. So I want to add the point to the existing points in the leaderboard. So I'll show a little demo of this in a little bit, but first thing I had to do is I had to make a leaderboard like this. And when I look at my leaderboard at the moment, there's no results found. There's no results because this is a kind of freshly reset leaderboard. But how do we actually add to this leaderboard? So I mentioned when the player presses the add point button here, we want to kind of keep track of how many points they have and rank the players. So it's very, very simple. In my cloud script, I go to the function which adds the point. So this function is directly called when you press this button, add point. And I basically, this is the function here. So I basically added this code. I get the current player ID, and I update. I update the player statistics. And we're updating player score. That's the name of our leaderboard, and we're just adding 1 point to it. So that's all I had to do. And let's have a look at this in action. So hopefully, if I press add point, I got 1 point, 2 points, and that should have added it to the leaderboard. So if we just refresh this, we should see scores coming through. It can take a few seconds for scores to come through. It doesn't update automatically, but it can take a few seconds. Okay, I've only got 1 player here, and you can see I've got 2, which kind of makes sense. I also installed the game on another phone just so we can have 2 players. So let me also add points from that player. So I'm going to add 3 points from that player, and when I refresh, there we can see, this other player has 3 points. So if you have 100 players, this would automatically rank them and give you a leaderboard to kind of, see who has what points and what their rank is. So that's very, very simple. So this way we can basically now just keep track of our players' score. But what we actually want to do now is, like I said, once a day or once a week, we want to actually automatically give some Bitcoin to the top players. So PlayFab did have something called prize tables, and I looked at prize tables, and prize tables kind of let you do something like this. A prize table, it basically can let you it can let you choose a leaderboard, and when that leaderboard is reset, so when you manually reset it or automatically reset it once a day or once a week, you can basically tell it to do a bunch of different stuff. So you can grant an item, so for example, from the player's rank from the 1st to 10th position, when that leaderboard's reset, I can automatically give them an item. The item being the PlayFab built-in items inventory system. But what we want to do, we don't want to give them an item, we actually want to send them Bitcoin. So we actually need to call a function from CloudScript to do that. So I looked at calling this execute a CloudScript function. So when the leaderboard ends, I would execute a CloudScript function, and I would, in that function, I would send the player some Bitcoin based on their rank. That is a good way to do it, but then I saw this thing here. It says CloudScript functions triggered from PlayStream actions are limited to 1 second of CPU time. That's a little bit dangerous because in that function, when we give a player Bitcoin, we need to call the Zebedee send to gamertag API. And technically that could take more than a second, if the internet is slow or Zebedee is, being a bit slow at the time, and that would cause our function to fail. So it's not really a great place to do it like this. So I kind of looked at this and I played with it, but I abandoned it. So I didn't use price tables, but I just wanted to talk about it because price tables, it's there. And some people might say, why aren't you using price tables? What I'm doing is actually something different. I'm using a function called scheduled tasks. And the scheduled task basically lets you automate calling a CloudScript function. So you basically give the task a name, and the type of task is to run a CloudScript function once. And as far as I know, it doesn't say the 1 second limit here, so I thought this was a better way to do it. And we can schedule this to happen manually, or we can make it recurring. So I actually made a task already. So I just called it test. It's going to run a CloudScript, and it's going to call this award prize function. So we have this leaderboard, it's getting players high scores, it's ranking them automatically, and then whenever we want to do the payout, we call a scheduled task, and the scheduled task will call this function award prize. So if we look at award prize, award prize is very, very simple. I'll get rid of this. It calls this function. It basically makes a request to the leaderboard. I'm saying, can you get me the top 100 results starting from 0? So the top player. You could just say, give me the top 5 or the top 1, I guess. So this would give you the top 1. It's up to you. So I get that, and then I iterate through the leaderboard list, and I basically give them Bitcoin based on their position. So I'll dig into this code in a little bit, but before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit more about scheduled tasks. So scheduled tasks you can run manually, or you can make it recurring. So if you wanted to automate this, you would basically make it recurring, and here you add a cron expression. So if you're not familiar with cron jobs are kind of a Linux type thing. You basically tell something to run, once a week, once a month, once a day at 2 o'clock, and they kind of have a kind of way to generate the expression. So for example, I wanted this to run every week at Friday at 9 p.m. and this is the expression I had to write. It's a little bit complicated to know how to write the expression, but PlayFab recommends going to his website, crontab.guru, and this will help you generate the kind of string you want. So if you wanted it to run at like 6 o'clock on a Friday, you would change this to 18. If you wanted it to run on a Monday, you'd change this to 1. If you wanted this to run, every day, I'm not sure. So you play every minute on Monday. I'm not super familiar, but if you do random, it gives you some example. What I actually found quite helpful for this is I actually used Chat GPT, and I wrote something like, write a cron expression for every day at 9 a.m. And yeah, it kind of told me how to do it, and I pasted it in there, and it said at 9 a.m. So yeah, but that's what this is. Obviously, for the purpose of this tutorial, I don't want to wait until Friday, so I'm just going to schedule it manually. But if you want to do it automated, you would use this. But basically, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's just take a step back and confirm what's going on. So we have a leaderboard. When the players are adding points, it's ranking the leaderboard. And then we want to use the scheduled task to basically run a cloud script function which grabs the leaderboard and based on the rank gives people Bitcoin. So let's take a look at that code that actually pays people Bitcoin that the scheduled task is calling. So it's calling award prize. Okay. So we get the leaderboard. The leaderboard, we iterate through the leaderboard, and that gives us the results. So this is an array of the player, their value, so like how many points they have, and their position. So 0 is their first place, 1 is their second place. It's kind of default array type terminology here. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm adding those players to an object I call rewards queue. So I basically want to end with a queue, a queue that of the players I want to send rewards to, and then I want to empty that queue by sending them the rewards. But I've got a little check here. I'm saying if the stat value is less than the max score value. So I said before that people might cheat, right? People might find a way to give themselves 1 billion points, So for example, if a player in the leaderboard has an insanely high points, like higher than max score value, which I've set here to, I set it to like, I don't know, what's that? 10 million or something like that. I think they've cheated or they've got a farm, so I would just not even consider it. I won't even add it to the rewards queue. So that's what that is there for. It just lets you do kind of checks before you actually do it. Anyway, so at the end of this function, I basically got an object here, rewards queue, which is, it's basically set here, it's empty. And rewards queue just kind of has, it's an array of the player's ID with their positions and values. And then once that's made, I'm happy with that. I call this function empty rewards queue. So this actually will then go one by one and pay Bitcoin to the players. So let's look at what empty rewards queue function does. So it's important to note that each time I do the award prize, I empty the queue because obviously we're starting from scratch anyway. Let's go to empty rewards queue function, which is here. I basically, I get the keys of the queue. So we're saving to the play fab ID. So this is the ID of the players. If the object is empty, if there are no more keys, it means we've emptied the queue, and we can say that the payments are complete and end the function. If not, if there are entries in that reward queue, we want to process each reward. So I'm just getting the last playfab ID in the queue. I also get the player info. So this would be this here, right? So I get the position, the value. Yeah. So here, I basically got like the last entry in the queue. I know the playfab ID, which is the key of it, and I also know the position they ranked in the leaderboard. So from their playfab ID, which is the current player key, I want to get the Zebedee user ID from their internal data. This was talked about in the first video of the series. So I've got that, and I want to delete this player from the queue now. So like, okay, we've got their data, remove them from the queue. So I get the gamer tag for the ID, because remember, we need to get the latest gamer tag. The player may have changed their gamer tag in the app, so we need to get their ID never changes, but we want to get the latest gamer tag. I also want to figure out how much Bitcoin do I want to send them based on their position. And the way I'm doing this is I had their position here. So if this player is first, their position would be 0. If their player is second in the leaderboard, their position would be 1. So I actually just made an object here, reward amount. It's specified at the top here. It's just an array. We have 10,000 millisats, 9,000 millisats, 8,000 millisats, etc., etc. And how this worked, it basically, where are we? Yeah, so if they're ranked first, i.e. their position is 0, we would actually grab this one because this is the first element in the array. If they are second, their position would be 1, we'd give them 9,000. If they're third, their position would be 2, we'd give them 8,000 because that's 0, 1, 2 in the array. If their position is, say, 10, this would throw an error because it would say array out of bounds because the array is only 5 elements long. So obviously, if you want to support more players, you have to make sure this reward amount is bigger or handle it a different way. But that's what I'm doing here. That's just a way that I can structure it to decide, which rank gets which amount of sats. Okay, so now I've got that. I basically send to gamertag. If there's an error, I don't want to return here actually, because if I return here, it's not going to move on to the next place. Let's just ignore that. Let's just do log.error here. Couldn't send to gamertag, whatever. Anyway, it sends it, it tries to send it, and then it calls the function again. And this time when it calls the function again, it checks, okay, have we got any more keys in the rewards queue? If the queue is 0, then the queue is empty. We can stop the payouts. If the queue isn't 0, we've got 1 player left. So in our example, we actually had 2 players, if you remember correctly. We had 2 players. So our reward queue should have 2 players in it. So when this function runs first, it gets the first player, it deletes them, does the sending, then it calls the function again. Queues.length will now be 1 instead of 2. So we continue again, we delete it. Now the rewards queue would be empty. So when we call it again, the queue keys.length would be 0 and we can return. And we have emptied the queue. So this is basically what's known as recursion in computer science. You could technically do this inside the for loop here, but it's not advised to do this kind of stuff in a for loop. It's just best to kind of recursively call the function. Anyway, that's how I've done it. There's probably a better way to do it. And that's pretty much it. So let's actually have a look at that in action. Let's actually just try to kind of empty our queue. So let me have a look here. Okay, so I'm going to open my Zebedee wallet here. And actually both these players have the same gamer tag, so they both will be sent to my Zebedee wallet. Oop, I've got to sign in. Let me just quickly sign in. Give me a second here. Takes a little while for me to sign into the Zebedee wallet because I need to go through some security things such as Google Authenticator. Okay, almost there. There we go. I'm in the wallet. Sorry about that little distraction. So we go to my transactions. Okay, so I haven't got any transactions at the moment. Now I'm going to call the scheduled task. Again, you can manually have this call, or you can set it to happen automatically. I'm just going to call it now. And while I'm doing that, let me just open up the play stream monitor so you can see any logs. Okay, it's just handy to have that there. So I'm going to save and run it, and we should see that the scheduled cloud script executed. So it called the award prize, so we can actually see what's gone here. So it's got logs, it's in the award prize, we can see we get the leaderboard and we log the leaderboard. So you can see here, yeah, this is our leaderboard. We have this player is positioned 0, so first with 3, and this player is position 1, so 2 with the value of 2. Okay, that's fine, that's worked well. And then we've sent 9,000 to second player and 10,000 to the first player. And it's completed. So these are all the same gamer tag because it's me. But if we look at our code, yeah, we are logging that out sent to gamer tag. So if I look at if I refresh my Zebedee wallet, yeah, we can actually see, yeah, I got 9 sats and 10 sats. So, yep. And that's basically it. That's how I got kind of a leaderboard plus daily, weekly payout. So, of course, if you wanted to do this in an automated way, you would need to. So, for example, if I want this to happen, on a Friday at 9 o'clock, I have this function here. But I also want to make sure I reset the leaderboard as well. So after that happens, perhaps my leaderboard, after it happens, I would manually press reset, or I would reset it automatically. I'm not actually sure. Yeah. I don't actually know. It doesn't seem to. Yeah, you might need to do a bit of research on how to, because it says hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly, but it doesn't actually say when that's gonna happen. So maybe just once a week, just go in here and after you're happy that the payments have been set out, press reset now, and it should be reset. Or otherwise, do some research to reset it weekly, but make sure your scheduled task happens just before that. And if any payments fail or people complain, PlayFab does let you download the leaderboard so you can kind of see like what players got. So after the fact, you can confirm any issues. But before I drop off, there is one more thing I wanted to talk about. So before you do the leaderboard, before you actually do the payouts, it's actually good to take a look at the leaderboard and actually spot any players who have cheated, right? So for example, say I take a look at my leaderboard now. Give it a sec. Okay, and let's just pretend that this player, their value is like 8,000, but all the other players are like like 100, 200, but one player has 8,000. They completely have way more than the other players. Before I actually do the scheduled payout, I might want to come in here, take a look, and just delete the obvious cheating players. And likewise, that's why we also had this kind of check here, where it's there. Just make sure their score is below an acceptable amount. Anyway, the whole point of this leaderboard kind of payout approach is it does give you time to get rid of cheaters or figure out cheaters before the payment's sent. With the other approach we did in the first video, where players get points and they withdraw automatically, you're not able to kind of check manually any cheats before that happens. So that's just an important point to reiterate. Before I drop off, there's a little bit of housekeeping. I think in the last videos, I think I made a mistake here. In the withdraw function, I was checking, I was trying to get a Boolean value, but I later realized that didn't work, so I've just changed this code here. Anyway, I'll add the updated code to the GitHub repository. And thank you for watching. Just to reiterate, this is just a kind of example way of how it could be done. This is by no means complete production ready code, so use it at your own risk. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.